Alrighty, and we are live. How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys all so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here on WardyNYM. I would first like to apologize if I'm laggy to start out the show. If I'm laggy in portions or large parts of the show, as you can see, this is not my normal setup. Still out of town. Will hopefully be back in town tomorrow. So when Senga pitches, I do post-game show. Then more than likely, I'll have my usual setup. For those that don't know, I have been at Port St. Lucie in the Mets facilities for 4 to 5 games over the past handful of days. Was even in Miami for the World Baseball Classic. Team Puerto Rico, as you see the hat on here, facing off against Venezuela. Venezuela ended up winning, but of course I got to rep Lindor. As much as I love Eddie Narvaez, Lindor is one of my personal favorites, has been prior to him being a Met. So big game tonight, the WBC. We have a lot to get into in this matchup as the Mets found themselves losing 4-1 to the St. Louis Cardinals. So we're going to be breaking down all the nitty and gritty about this game. And while usually, especially for losses, when the Mets don't have plenty of their stars because they're still in the WBC, I'm not going to necessarily cover every single game like this in a live stream format, but felt the need to do so today, considering the fact that I'm back in town and have the time to do so. Watch the entire game that transpired. But rest assured, when the regular season is rolling out, we'll be covering as many games as humanly possible, at minimum 100, hopefully 101, 110 or so like we did last year. For consistent post-game coverage, this is the #1 post-game show here on YouTube, covering the Metropolitans, so make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Appreciate everyone here in the live show. To all my loyal viewers, Darren, how you doing? Great member. How you doing, everybody else? Really appreciate you guys. And for people on replay, let me know your biggest takeaway from this 4-1 loss to the Cardinals down below. But like I said, we have a lot to get into because a lot transpired, not only in the ball game, not too much offensively, obviously, but from what is going on around the team with the pitching staff, WBC updates. There's a lot of other things going on that I've been wanting to discuss, especially because we're not coming out with the Bleav in Queens podcast episode this week. We're taking the week off. We'll be back next week. So let's just jump right into it again. Appreciate everyone being in here. And of course, I have to let you all know that today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your #1 source for your sports betting needs. So make sure you head over to betonline.ag using promo code Bleav at BLEAV. That way you get yourself a 50% off welcome bonus. BetOnline, it's where the games begin. Folks, let's officially let the show begin. Happy to be back. I missed you all. I know that I've been doing content, short clips that you saw during my trip there in Port St. Lucie, but I'm happy to be in a live stream format for a change. Really, it's been, about a week since the last time I did one of these, aside from the roundtable live stream we did with myself, Ballcap Sports, Robbie Hyde, Stark Raven Sports, and my brother. I mean, we did an awesome live stream together. We were all hanging out there in Port St. Lucie. But now let's talk about this Mets game because, I'm the biggest thing is that by no means am I concerned by this loss. The pitchers that gave up runs today for the Mets are guys that are not even going to sniff the bigs this year. They're minor leaguers. That's about it. The offense definitely has been on a cold spell as of late. I was at the game yesterday when they lost against the Nationals. So even though that, yes, you have to look at it spring train, would like to see some more offense regardless, just for the sake of being a fan and covering this team. But no less, today, the story truly was Justin Verlander. You need to lower your mic, or lower the mic a little bit. Like I said, yeah, I'm out of place. I'm literally have this set up on my on a bar table right now. So that's what we're working with. Same way that you guys have seen me do setups on ping pong tables when I'm out of town too. Again, we got to do what we got to do, right? So first thing I want to get off my chest is just how good Justin Verlander looked today. We'll go through the nitty-gritty. You see the numbers there. I mean, he just looks stellar today. And what really stands out to me is that after the game, in his post-game interview, he said that he felt pretty sloppy on the bump today. So you talk about excellence, the reigning AL Cy Young Award winner. The guy goes 5 shutty without a problem. Absolutely beautiful performance from him. 71 pitches, total 51 strikes for that matter. Had himself 12 whiffs in the game, including 7 on his four-seamer. Just really, really strong start from Justin Verlander today, sitting into low to mid 90s on the fastball. I have a lot more that I want to say on him, but JV's looking like he's in mid-season form already. My goodness, he just looked phenomenal. So, and also, of course, I have to let you guys know that something that we're hopefully going to be having out, some content over the next week from my trip. I vlogged a lot of it. Got a chance to interview Mets prospect, one of my personal favorites that they drafted just over the past year or so, in Jet Williams. So stay tuned. There's going to be some fun content coming out from PSL rather, and also from the WBC. So make sure to keep an eye out for over the next week. Give me 1 second. My TV just decided to play music. It's the Mets music I hear from SNY. So give me 1 second. Not sure why that happened. All righty. Sorry about that, guys. The game was over, but it just started to rerun the Mets game for whatever reason. But okay, so yeah, a lot of content's not a lot of content, but a lot of cool. Hopefully, a nice vlog is going to be coming out over the next week from my trip. I'm excited to share that with you guys, and also have the chance to meet Tyler McGill, met Jose Quintana. You guys probably know that story as well. And to summarize, just real quick about Quintana, I just want to share briefly about my trip. Then we'll get into more on this game. Is that I met Jose literally at breakfast, and I asked him how you feeling. He said feeling good, and then a couple hours later, we find out that he's out minimum of 3 months because of his stress fracture. So people were roasting me on Twitter and everything. I mean, I can't help the fact that he told me what he told me. Feeling good doesn't mean that you're not injured. I know he was injured. I expected him to be out long, but it was still kind of funny how that ended up transpiring in that sense. But in one sense, it's kind of a blessing in disguise for Quintana that he had to get further imaging done because, as we saw, they found a lesion in his rib area as well. So thankfully, it's benign. So he's getting surgery not only to fix his stress fracture in his rib, but also that lesion. So it's beyond unfortunate for Quintana. I would just first like to say that on that front. I'll get into the other updates on the Mets pitchers here after I break down a little bit about the game. But Quintana, I really want to emphasize because, again, a lot of people were ragging on this guy right away. Find out he has a lesion. So I'm glad that they found this, obviously, for him. It seems like that he's going to be okay, which, that's the biggest goal and all. It sucks that the Mets are going to be without him for probably the majority of the year. The earliest they say he's going to return is July. I mean, that probably means it won't be till August or September. And we're keeping things a buck. It's another year where the Mets have a pitcher that's hopefully going to be that late trade deadline acquisition, if you will. But nonetheless, whenever Quintana returns, hopefully it's this season. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Great guy. When I had a chance to meet him, just talk shop for like 5 minutes. Same thing with Tyler McGill. Shout out to Julie, who's a good friend of mine. That is, in fact, Tyler's mom. Had a chance to hang out with her and her dad, pardon me, not her dad, and Tyler's dad at the game for a couple innings yesterday. Great people, great family overall. But now let's get into more on this Mets game before I talk about the other updates going on with the Mets and their pitchers. And basically, there isn't much to harp on aside from Justin Verlander, right? If we go through the notes here, inning by inning, let's start with that, shall we? Justin Verlander in the first inning today has himself 2 strikeouts, and then Tomas Nido for the final out drills out Carlson trying to get to second base. If you're wondering, okay, if JV had no hits, no walks in the first, how did Carlson get on? Well, it was because of an error from Jose Peraza in the infield. Then we get to the second inning. JV again takes a liner to the leg. It's going to be bruised up for a couple days. He said that in his post game today. However, he was okay. He continued to pitch. And then the next pitch that he throws after taking that liner was it's all barrel ball. I'm forgetting who it was from the Cardinals, but it was caught beautifully, as you've seen in the highlights probably, if you haven't already, from, yes, that being in Brandon Nimmo with a beautiful diving catch. Expect to see plenty more of that throughout the season from Brandon Nimmo, who has really looked stellar in center over the past year and a half after looking initially brutal and really not playing balls too well. And don't get me wrong, he still plays deep at times for sure and finds himself racing in, but Nimmo is at his peak when it comes to defensive ability there in center, and I appreciate that. Then we get to the third. Again, no offense from the Mets for the majority of this game. Ryan Mauricio with a base knock, and what's key about this base knock is it's from the right side. Ronnie, I watched BP. I was at Mets workouts yesterday before attending the game, and Ronnie took the majority of his BP from the right side. He was working with Tommy Pham, Michael Perez, Abraham Almonte. I took some videos of that, posted on Twitter. I'll have it in the vlog too, I'm sure. And Ronnie, not only a massive human being that you see in person, but again, working more on his ability from that right side, because all the highlights that we've seen from him thus far this spring have been from that left side, including that towering Nuki at 450 plus feet to the right field, in which that was right over my head. I was right hanging down that lawn section right a couple days ago over the weekend. And funny enough, earlier in that game, I had a chance to meet Ronnie. I posted as a short here on the YouTube channel. I never went and got an autograph for anyone. My brother's a huge Luis Gourmet fan and was wearing Gourmet's jersey, so he wanted to get Gourmet to sign his signature, and unfortunately that didn't happen for him, but Ronnie was right behind him and Pham. So while I was standing there, Ronnie was there, so I just pushed my hat in front of him and asked him, just to sign the hat. You probably can't see it, but Ronnie did sign the hat. So when he becomes, O'Neal Cruz 2.0, really appreciating that. But no less, Ronnie, again, working more from that right side, and that's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on for the remainder of this spring, as while he's not expected, of course, to crack this roster, really impressing for a guy that very well could find himself starting in AAA, should it not be AA for, say, the first month of the season or however long it may be. But Ronnie gets a base knock there in the third. Then Jose Peraza with an infield single after. Then we get to the fourth. Justin Verlander would have won 2-3 inning. And then to the fifth, JV was perfect through 4, gives up the first barrel baseball for not an out, but rather a double, that being from Burleson. But that's the only thing that would happen in the fifth. So again, JV's final line today: 5 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, 1 hit, 0 walks, 8 strikeouts on 71 pitches, and once more with 51 of those pitches being strikes. JV looks stellar. Tomasino in the bottom of the fifth, who's been looking phenomenal this spring, has a handful of home runs, has a couple doubles, and like 26 or 27 play appearances, ripped an opposite field solo bomb to give the Mets, at that point, an early lead. However, it wouldn't last too long, because then as Courtney came in and other Mets relievers that, again, are coming from the minor league squad, they're not going to be with the Mets this year at all. They're the ones that really gave up the worst hits, and that is what led to the Cardinals finding themselves ultimately with a 4-1 lead and a 4-1 win. But if there's any upside offensively, again, before the game concluded, was that in the 8th inning, Brett Beatty does what he does best, and hitting for opposite field, got himself a broken bat base knock, dropped it, not a bloop, but, had a little bit of air in there that dropped between, left center. So Beatty with another base knock, he continues to have, over 1,000 OPS here in spring training. Him, Mauricio, and Vientos alike, all having a lot of great at-bats. So overall, the Mets found themselves losing this ball game, but that really doesn't mean much to me. The standout is Justin Verlander. That is surely what I'm happy about. I'm sure many of you guys feel that exact same way. So JV, biggest takeaway, again, it's great to see him looking in midseason form already. It's officially announced that Mad Max Scherzer will be the Mets opening day starter in Miami, but home opener, April 6th, it's likely going to be Justin Verlander. So mark your calendars if you're either attending or just going to watch at home, like I know I surely am, and covering the game afterwards. That is what is going to be your starters for both the season opener, Mad Max, and then the home opener is going to be JV. So based on that, it looks like Kodai Senga very well is going to start the season as the Mets number 2 until proven otherwise. And speaking of Senga, who of course has dealt with, a little bit of tendonitis at the base of his index finger there. I was supposed to see him pitch over the past week when I was in Port St. Lucie. Of course, they scratched him the day of, which naturally upsetted me, but is what it is. Senga will likely be pitching tomorrow. Worked at least an hour yesterday in bullpen, an early morning workout. So he's really much a perfectionist, is feeling better already, and Senga is ready to start the year, which, again, based on how the Mets have their pitching alignment, it looks like JV's going to start the year as of now in the rotation as their number 3, which lines him up perfectly there for the home opener on April 6th. So in case you guys are unaware of that, that's further updates for you all. Again, I appreciate everyone chiming in the live stream. Again, for people on replay, let me know your thoughts down below. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button. Now let's get into some further updates on the pitching front before I break down, the nitty and gritty on further on the WBC. I want to share my personal opinions on that for people that are interested as well. But one thing that I do want to share briefly, and, I'm not a Jets fan. For those that don't know, I'm actually a Steelers fan. I know you're probably wondering, how does that make sense? Blame my father, okay? He brought me up as a Steelers, a Jets, and a Rangers fan. So if you hate one of those teams, I apologize. But I just want to give a kudos to all Jets fans out there, especially my buddy Richie at Jets Media and covers the Knicks too at Knicks Media. Has been covering the Rodgers debacle sweepstakes endlessly the past week, and we found out in the Pat McAfee show today that Rodgers' intentions are to be with the Jets as of last Friday. So whenever that gets solidified, we'll soon find out. But to all the Jets fans out there, because I know we have Jets fans watching the show. I'm not one of them, but I have respect for them and the Giants. I have no issue with either New York football team as long as they're not playing my team, obviously. So congratulations to Jets fans. I know you just want to get pen to paper, get it done. But that was massive news today, and it felt worthy of discussion, at least for that quick minute or two that we just harped on there. But now let's get into the pitching front. So we talked about Jose Quintana has that lesion, which again is scary stuff to hear, but it is great to know at least that they found that, right? Because if he didn't have that stress fracture, if he didn't have that pain in his side, who knows how much longer he could have been dealing with this, and who knows how long he had that lesion going on. Again, this is a Jose Quintana that's basically played full seasons his entire career outside the shortened 2020 season. So he's been pretty healthy the majority of his career now. So now it's just a matter of, okay, he's going to be out for a bit. So now we have David Pearson, Tyler McGill, who both look strong, very, very good. Both had scoreless outings in their past 2 starts, respectively. I mean, over the past couple days. When I saw McGill yesterday, I said, you looked really sharp. And he's like, yeah, it wasn't too bad, huh? Definitely working with the emphasis on that curveball. And then Peterson yesterday looked masterful as well, even though the Mets couldn't get him runs. And, of course, Justin Verlander today, too. But we go on from those guys that are expecting to compete for the fifth rotation spot, assuming that they don't start the year with a six-man rotation. Now let's talk about competing for that bullpen, because we do have some unfortunate news that actually came out today. Sam Coonrod, who's a flame-throwing right-hander for the Mets that they picked up, of course, from the Philadelphia Phillies organization, has dealt with an uncomfortable shoulder for pretty much his entire career, finally feeling healthy entering camp. And now, just like that, in a blink of an eye, Sam Coonrod's chances of cracking this Mets bullpen are completely gone to start the year. Now, while he's definitely going to make an impact at some point this season, it won't be for a bit, as he was diagnosed with a high-grade lat strain, his right lat, of course, which is where he's throwing from. So Sam Coonrod, beyond unfortunate news for a guy who has looked excellent this spring, and wishing him a speedy recovery. Now going from one guy that's competing for the pen versus a guy that is in the pen, and Brooks Raley. For everyone that knows, over the past couple of days, it was announced that Aaron Loup is taking that spot as the southpaw specialist there in the bullpen for Team USA. Former Mets legend, that being an Aaron Loup for Brooks Raley, because he had an exit due to injury. Raley, with his hamstring injury, he is throwing more, is pretty much a week away from, actually doing much for the Mets when it comes to doing an appearance, throwing or whatever. Still has his ways to go, but thankfully it looks like Raley is going to be okay. The Mets just aren't going to push him much prior to the regular season beginning. So Raley, while that news was initially unfortunate, he's making his progress, just needs the hammy to catch up with him too. Believes it might have been from dehydration. He really doesn't know how the injury happened. These are just natural tweaks, bumps, and bruises that you deal with in the road when you're ramping up, especially as a pitcher. So Raley, he will be back with the Mets soon enough, but it's taken, the week off from doing anything strenuous. Bryce Montez Diaca, the flamethrower, who I absolutely have loved this spring, a guy who I certainly expect to crack this Mets bullpen, get some appearances throughout the year, especially with injuries inevitably happening. Well, he's going to be out for a little bit, has a stress reaction in his elbow, will be reevaluated next week. So it doesn't look like it's anything too serious as of now. But again, Diaca, when you have the mechanics, when you have the flamethrower touching 101 and 102 on the gun, I'm not all that shocked that he has a stress reaction in his elbow. He might have to dial it back a little bit on the velo. I'm curious to see how that is all going to unveil itself, if you will. But Diaca, who I'm a big fan of, excited to see him have an impact in this Mets bullpen when the time is right. It just is not now for his case, especially. And now let's get into the guy that is no longer part of the Mets organization, and that is Zach Green. It really shouldn't come as a surprise. Zach Green was picked up in the Rule 5 draft from the Yankees this past offseason, that being the Mets. And the Mets, over the past 20, 30 years, have only kept one or two guys that they've acquired from the Rule 5 draft, because it's mandatory that if you acquire a reliever like Green, that they have to be in the starting bullpen to start the year. And Green did not impress nearly enough. I saw him get cooked up in person a little bit. So when you see that happen, it's not shocking that he is now brought back to the Yankees, and the Mets have to pay a fee of $50,000, which is by all means no problem. So Zach Green, it was a nice little flash in the pan to see if the Mets had something there that they could work with. They felt that given the depth that they have in this bullpen, that he was not warranted of cracking this roster to start the year. And now he will be with the Yankees, and they will figure it out what they want to do with him. But he is no longer a Mets issue, if that makes sense. So further updates as well, I would love to share with you guys briefly, is again, Kodai Senga is expected to be on the bump for tomorrow night's game, which I think is around 6 o'clock or so. So keep an eye out for that one. I should be covering that game as well. So as long as nothing crazy happens, I got to travel back home later today or tomorrow, because I'm not at where I currently reside. Again, still baby steps in trying to get back from, my flight landed last night from Florida. I really wish I was still back in Port St. Lucie. I got to be honest with that one. But I do want to share with you guys as well just how amazing my experience was with the World Baseball Classic. I'm sure I'll harp on this more in future videos, live streams, the podcast for that matter. But man, oh man, when I talk about the best baseball experience I've ever had, World Baseball Classic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and Miami takes a cake. I mean, nothing even sniffs. No regular season Mets game even touches what I witnessed, which was sold out crowd of roughly 40,000. Felt like the entire country of Puerto Rico was there. Good amount of Venezuelan fans too, but it was probably, 65-35, 70-30 in Puerto Rican fans' favor. Just electric, nonstop. Screaming. Banging, doing drums, doing, rattlers, whatever they had, the entirety of the game as soon as first pitch was thrown. Puerto Rico was down 8-9 runs at one point, and they got a run, and you would have thought they just tied the game, if not won the game. That is how insane it was, and that is how much I love that type of culture, especially when you bring in, Spanish culture with baseball. Truly is something special. I've always admired Puerto Rican culture as well. My girlfriend is Puerto Rican, their family. So I love everything about the culture as is. But from a baseball perspective, I can't begin to tell you just how phenomenal it was. Team Venezuela had a phenomenal game, so all credit goes to them. They're 4-0 now at this WBC, and now Puerto Rico is going to be matching up against Dominican Republic, who is on paper you'd argue the best looking team in all this bracket here in the WBC. It's an elimination game. It's win or go home tonight. And unfortunately, he isn't going to be starting, which is what was initially expected, but hopefully he will be pitching at some point, is Dominic Hamill, Mets pitching prospect who won minor league pitcher of the year this past year, was the first player guest that we had on the show back a couple months ago. Make sure to check out that interview as part of the Bleav in Queens podcast here, wherever you get your podcast. Dominic Hamill's representing Team Puerto Rico, will hopefully be pitching tonight. Regardless on how he does, I'm just so excited and proud of him for that experience. It's going to be electric to see. They are starting the game with an opener, I believe a reliever from the Minnesota Twins organization. But no less, again, I know that not everyone is into the WBC, but I just have to say, what an effing experience. I mean, it was truly like, I mean, not even a Mets playoff game touches what that was, truly. World Series is the only thing that could possibly compare to that. I've never experienced World Series in person, but even then, I mean, there was very little points, if at all, throughout the entirety of the game, regardless of it being blown out for a bit in Venezuela's favor until Puerto Rico really started to rally back, thanks to Lindor and some others. Just an unreal experience. I highly recommend everyone, if they ever get a chance at any point in their life, especially if you're going to see, any of the teams of, Puerto Rican descent, DR, Venezuela. I mean, Cuba is going to be going to Miami for a game soon. That's their backyard, so I can only imagine how nuts it's going to be there. Team USA, I know they're going bananas there in Arizona right now, but just from my personal experience, uneffing believable, and I'm so grateful that I got to be part of such an electric atmosphere. Also, shout out every single one of you Mets fans, subscribers I know on the channel that went out of their way to reach out to me and, run into me at Port St. Lucie or even at WBC. I had people coming up to me. It really does mean a lot. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for the support. But I'm going to check out some of your comments quick before we wrap things up. Again, final score today was 4-1. Not going to harp on it much. Justin Verlander was the standout today. Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty got base knocks. That makes me happy. I saw Alvarez rope a deep single. Could have been a double. But again, the outfield got it nice yesterday, and the Mets lost to the Nationals. So I've seen the kids all hit lately. That's always great. I saw Beatty. He looks strong as well when I saw them against the Nationals. The Nationals facilities, West Palm, over the past weekend. Great facility too, my ad. Oh, beautiful. If you think Clover Park's nice for Port St. Lucie, got to go to West Palm. The Nationals and Astros share it. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ballpark. But let me get us some comments now. Let's see. All this talent that is ready to go right now, produce the power that this lab so desperately needs. It must start from opening day, set the right tone. Oh, I 100% agree. And I expect and hopefully we'll see that transpire. Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you at all there. I think the Mets are going to come out guns a-blazing for sure. I mean, that's what we expect, right? Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you there at all. And Steve Cohen in the chat. Hello, Worry. Because of your YouTuber success and loyalty to the Mets organization, both you and Giraffe and Mark both are gifted becoming part-time owners of the New York Mets. Thank you, Steve. I greatly appreciate that. That's fine. You guys are watching the live chat. You see that. How does one grow up a Mets, Rangers, Steelers fan? Dad grew up around. My father actually grew up in Corona, Queens, but especially as a football fan, younger, like as a kid, it was casual. And growing up, both the Jets and the Giants were not good. And when you looked at the teams that were good, if you're going to hop on a bandwagon as a kid, which again is the best time to do it, so you can really follow that team throughout your entire life, you had really two options. It was be a Cowboys fan or be a Steelers fan. And my father, and I'm grateful that he made this decision, said I can't be a Cowboys fan. Sorry to all the Cowboys fans that just insulted, because I know there's plenty in New York for that matter as well. But he decided to go with the Steelers, and I think he made the right choice with the type of success they had in the 70s and, of course, what they had here in the 2000s. So, yeah, that is where the Steelers fandom comes from, for those that are wondering. But with that being said, folks, it's a Mets loss in spring training. Not going to harp on it much more than that. I just want to thank everyone once more for chiming into the live show. Whether you watched live, appreciate you guys chiming in, smashing those buttons. Whether you watch on a replay, make sure to let me know your biggest takeaway from today's game and just your biggest takeaway here from spring overall. What are you liking? What are you not liking? There's definitely a lot of guys that are impressing me right now. And there's some guys that are expected to crack the roster, mainly one or two that I have quite a bit to say about, and not in a positive fashion. I know that spring only means so much, but especially when you're still arguably competing for a spot and showing little production, and I'll expand on that more probably next week's podcast, it is concerning. So, going to get into that more. But again, I want to thank you all for watching. Stay tuned. We'll hopefully be back live tomorrow, regardless on the result for Senga, to break down his game. Hope you enjoyed the health updates. Jets fans, hope you enjoyed me acknowledging the Rodgers situation, as I'm sure you guys are just frothing at the mouth right now. I can't believe what is transpiring. It's a good time to be a New York fan, regardless of who you're a fan of for the most part. Maybe not the Nets, but again, the Nets still have a great, young, promising future. So, most if not all teams in New York got to be feeling very happy right now. I'm happy for all, regardless on if I'm a fan of those teams or not. Thank you so much for watching. Love you all to death. We'll be back tomorrow. Expect plenty more content then. Next week, we'll get back to the consistent live streams and all that fun stuff. But until then, talk to you guys later. This is Rory signing out. And as always, let's go Mets, baby. Bye-bye.